cold rain fell like knives upon the smoking ruin of the twins. Soot-blackened beams jutted from collapsed halls, and the air carried the tang of slaughtered guests and sundered vows. Yet within that wreckage, a heartbeat still drummed. Robb Stark's fierce and unbroken. He crouched behind the overturned banquet table where his bannerman had dragged him moments after the crossbows sang. A jagged bolt protruded from the mail of his left shoulder, but the young wolf's eyes burned brighter than the torch-lit pyres around him. Grey Wind's carcass, pelt matted with Frey shafts, lay not 20 feet away, yet Robb lived. Fate had cracked, and through the fracture he meant to drive his sword. Lord Edwin Frey, face ashen beneath greasy curls, knelt before him, wrists bound in gilded feast cord. Beside Edwin shivered black-haired Aegon Jinglebell, once a mockery, now a hostage. 4 more Freys, Rosalind's brothers, half-grown and wide-eyed, huddled together, stunned by the violence of their kin's betrayal, turned back upon them. Robb's Northmen ringed the captives, pikes leveled, their cloaks dark with rain and vengeance. The path to this moment had been carved through chaos. When the musicians drew blades, Greatjon Umber had hurled a table into their ranks. Lord Bolton's betrayal faltered when Mage Mormont cleaved through his personal guard and drove him from the hall, screaming for his bastard son. Sir Brynden Tully, the Blackfish, guided the Queen and Lady Cailin through a postern gate, while a bare-headed Robb fought beside Grey Wind, carving a corridor of corpses toward the stables. There, Margaery's Tyrell guards, sent north by her grandmother as quiet envoys of alliance, barred the Freys long enough for the king to arm himself fully. The twins were now a charred husk claimed by the north. Lord Walder Frey, ancient, spiteful, and cursing to his last breath, had been dragged from his high seat and forced to watch as his sons bent their knees to the boy he had thought finished. One by one they were stripped of steel, silks, and swagger, left with only their trembling lives. A currency Robb meant to spend upon the Iron Throne itself. "Send riders," Robb ordered, voice hoarse but sure. Lady Mage to consolidate the crossing. Secure every bow, every bolt. The Freys will obey, or they will bleed in chains. Greatjon roared his agreement. Your grace. We'll make a river of their traitor blood if they squeak." He stomped away, bellowing orders. Lady Catelyn approached, cloak clinging to her wet hair. The torchlight revealed new lines about her eyes. "Robb," she murmured, "we must return to River Run, bind the Tully banners to us anew." "River Run stands," he replied, "but River Run is stone. King's Landing is rulership. If I retreat north, Tywin Lannister will paint me a boy king who fled south, failed, and crawled home. The realm whispers, we must roar." His gaze drifted to the shivering hostages. "The Freys will march before us, a shield of their own guilt. Let the lion try to chomp that." Catelyn's mouth tightened. "And Walder? He will not leave these walls," Robb said. "A cage, mother. Iron bars and broken pride." Thus did they begin the march. Okay. Cow. In the gray dawn 6 days later, banners streamed from the ruined causeway. Stark derrywolves flapped in the wind. Stitched once in innocence for a boy of 15. Now weathered by betrayal. Beside them drooped the inverted blue towers of House Frey, carried by forced hands bound at the wrist. Each morning, Lord Edwin and his brothers were paraded at spear point, forced to command their own levy southward, lest the steel at their backs drink Frey blood. The northern host, thinned yet unbowed, counted 8,000 spears, 4,000 breasts behind oak and iron shields, and perhaps 300 knights whose destriers bore scars of crossbow quarrels. They moved like a single wounded animal, pained, wary, but lashing out with living fury when skirmishers probed their flanks. Scouts whispered that Roose Bolton fled toward the Dreadfort with the tatters of his own men. Hunted by Mormont outriders whose vengeful horn calls echoed across the wet fens. Beyond Moat Cailin, word reached Robb of Stannis Baratheon's landing at Gulltown and Lord Tywin's sudden departure from King's Landing. The capital simmered without its lion. The throne room was ruled by a boy king of 8 and his mother's iron nails. The small council argued whether Robb Stark's specter was a rumor or a rushing storm. Robb, camped beneath giant weirwood dark pines, called his captains to council. Sir Brynden spoke first. If we drive south along the King's Road, we risk Tywin returning with the greater strength. A Northman cuts a tree at the trunk, not the branch. We must outmaneuver, strike where the King's Road folk still curse the Lannister name. Mage Mormont thumped gauntlet to table. The Riverlords hunger for retribution. Let them reclaim their lands while we strike for Maidenpool. Join with Stannis by sea. Yet it was Lady Sybil Spicer, Jane Westerling's mother, taken into camp for her daughter's sake, who offered unexpected counsel. You hold the Frey heirs, she said, voice low as shared sin. Walder's greed is known, but his fear is deeper. March into the Riverlands flaunting those boys, and the castles will open their gates. They dare not chance the wrath of a broken vow made whole by hostage blades. Then turn upon King's Landing from the Trident's mouth, with ships purchased by the coin of captive lives. Bento. Robb studied her as one weighs a blade yet to be tested. In her green eyes he saw ambition, and the hard truth. It shall be so, he decreed. We force the Freys to write letters, sealed in their own hands, commanding every crossing and levy to provision us. If any balk, Edwin will lose a finger, one for each denial. Silence answered, heavy with grim approval. Later, behind the privacy of a snapped-hide tent, he found Jean. The queen's dark hair spilled across a fur throw, her eyes rimmed red from the deaths of her kin in the hall. She rose when he entered, limbs trembling. Robb, you are hurt. She reached for his bandaged shoulder. He caught her hand gently. Pain reminds me I live. Too many do not. Night lingered in his gaze. A night no dawn could wholly erase. I will see you safe in River Run. And you? She asked, voice barely breath. I marched to tear the Lannister's golden cloak from the realm. He pressed her hand to his lips, soft amid the callous. Whatever comes, remember I loved you with every heartbeat I could spare from war. Kay. The campaign that followed became legend among hedge knights and tavern singers. The Bitter Crossing, where Lord Piper opened his gates after seeing Edwin Frey's ring finger severed. The Harvest of Herons, where Blackfish Tully ambushed 200 Lannister riders in the fog and sent their crimson cloaks floating downriver like autumn leaves. The Siege of Stony Sept, broken in a single night. Welcome. Every league southward, letters flew to King's Landing. Edwin's trembling script, blackened by blood and wax, proclaiming Stark overlordship and Frey fealty. Within the capital walls, Queen Regent Cersei shredded each parchment, but could not silence the whispers of her court. The spider's little birds perched on windowsills, chirping of a northern wolf wrapped in hostage chains, marching with the ghosts of violated guest right at his heels. When the Stark army reached Maidenpool, its harbor already flew the fiery heart stag of Stannis Baratheon. Lord Celtigar's galleys bobbed at anchor, their decks thrumming with sail sails from Lys and Myr. Robb rode to the shore with the grey wind banner borne before him, though the direwolf itself now slept in death's dim forest. Stannis received him upon the wet sand beneath a slate sky. Storm's End banners snapped behind the older man. The air tasted of salt and iron duties. Davos Seaworth, gloved fingers hiding shortened digits, stood at his king's side. Robb slid from the saddle, resisting the spike of pain in his healing shoulder. He strode toward Stannis, helm under his arm. The two kings considered each other in silence, the surf hissing at their boots. Stannis spoke first, voice rough as driftwood. You live when report said you died. His narrowed eyes flicked to the Frey boys bound beside Robb. And you carry leeches meant for Lannister throats. I carry justice, Robb answered, and a northern army that will not bend the knee to red satin lies. And yet you stand on Crownland's sand, within the realm of the one true king, Stannis said. Robb's jaw clenched. I seek no crown but the one I was forced to claim to defend my people. If vengeance can be wrought without further shattering the realm, I am ready to speak of fealty. Menetrater. At that, Davos' brows lifted. Even the surf seemed to pause. Stannis' blue eyes searched Robb's face, as though he peered through steel and bone to gauge the smithwork of the youth's resolve. No man saves the realm by fracturing it further, Robb continued. If your claim is righteous, prove it on the field against those who betrayed us both. The Freys will seek the ships you need down the Blackwater. March with me, and when the Red Keep falls, the North shall return within its own borders, owing you no more than the old oaths sworn to the throne. And now, Stannis' gaze flicked to the distant masts. He saw them for what they were: passage to a siege unanticipated by Tywin's war council. Gold cloaks garrisoned the city, but their spirit wavered beneath rumors of treachery answered in steel. The windblown mercenaries rode in Stannis' retinue. The broken men of the Blackwater still cursed Cersei's pyromancers under their breath. Thousands waited for a signal to choose new masters. Your shoulder bleeds, Stannis said at last. The wound will close, Robb replied. So be it, Stannis said. We break them together. He extended a mailed hand. Robb clasped it, northern frost meeting Stormland Flint. Okay. The joint host marched on Duskendale, where Lord Riker's body already dangled from the gatehouse. Cersei's answer to his whispered talks with Davos. The sight incited the common folk. They opened the sally port at night and lit large stores to blaze a beacon visible from the King's Road. Robb rode in first, his sword reflecting the conflagration. The small folk bowed, tears and soot streaking their faces. In the dungeons they found dozens of political prisoners. Among them, Sir Barristan Selmy, gaunt yet unbroken. He bent knee to Stannis with solemn dignity, then turned to Robb. My king, he said, echoing the title that once belonged to Robert Baratheon, and before him Eris. The realm has need of such honor as yours. Robb felt the weight of that praise heavier than the crown of Karstark gold he never wore. He nodded, unable to find words. Ka. By the time they neared the Blackwater, ravens flew across half the realm bearing news. Two kings ride together. A wolf at the stad's flank, hostages bristling upon their spears. The Lannister lion quit the field, fearing the reckoning he forged. Cersei redoubled the walls with wildfire jars rumored to sleep beneath the city streets. The faith militant, resurrected by her own scheming, clashed with gold cloaks in petty alley wars. King Tommen, sweet and terrified, rarely left his solar. Maester Pycelle drafted ravens begging for Tywin's return. Yet Tywin was days away, harried by guerrillas in the Riverlands, his supply lines harassed by men wearing flayed skin insignia. Bolton men turned by Mormont threats of slow bear-eaten deaths. The Lannister columns crawled west of Harrenhal, still weeks from the capital. Robb and Stannis encamped amid the burned hulks left by Blackwater's last battle. Between charred rib bones of scuttled ships, they planned anew. Saladhor San's Lyseni war galley Valiant. Lady slid into the river mouth under night's cloaked stars, bound for the South Quay with Frey captives lashed to masts, human shields against the harbor scorpions. Overland, Great John's berserkers crept along the King's Road's drainage ditches, their axes wrapped in oiled cloth to mute the clink of metal. The approach would be silent, sudden, and lit by betrayal's green glow turned against its mistress. The night before the assault, Robb stood atop a bluff overlooking the city. The skyline shimmered in moon silver. Atop the Red Keep, the king's banner drooped, a golden lion at rest. Beside Robb stood Jon Snow, no longer a boy of the watch but summoned from his post by ravens carrying Robb's command. The wall's ancient vows trembled before blood's call. Do you regret it? Jon asked, voice low as the river's flow. Regret? Robb's eyes stayed upon King's Landing's sprawl. I regret every death that sat my soul in this armor. But would I trade this hour for surrender? Never. Never. You? I broke my oath. An oath given to a realm that let my father's head roll, Robb said softly. The watch guards realms of men, these men. Protect them now, and your honor shines, whatever vows you shed. Jon nodded, but doubt lingered in his dark gaze. A shadow neither torch nor dawn could banish. Ka. When the attack began, it came from water, stone, and sewer alike. San's galleys disgorged Stormland knights onto the mudgate as green fire blossomed under the walls. Wildfire casks rolled by the lion's own alchemists, now bribed and threatened into stark Baratheon service. The conflagration painted the night emerald, mirroring the twins' old inferno. Inside, gold cloaks wavered at the sight of Frey hostages screaming from cages hoisted on siege towers, vow-breakers punished by the very house that paid them. Robb rode at the head of a column of Northmen through the Gate of the Gods, gates flung open from within by conspirators who cut down the portcullis chains. The ring of steel on cobble sang beneath the bell's cacophony. Greatjon's laughter echoed through Flea Bottom as he cleaved down men in crimson cloaks. Lady Mormont, her daughter Dacey at her side, seized the sept steps, swords steaming in cold night air. At the Red Keep, Clegane men resisted in a brutal, confused melee, until Ser Barristan Selmy strode forward, battered plate flashing green from distant flames. He called upon them to yield in the crown's name, promising justice for the small folk crushed too long by Cersei's whim. Half dropped their blades. The rest died beneath Selmy's white cloak stained in dusk's blood. Within Maegor's holdfast, Cersei barred the doors, hugging King Tommen to her breast with one hand and gripping a vial of nightshade in the other. She would not be taken alive, nor see her son shamed. When the final door splintered and Robb strode in, sword slick with gore, she raised the vial, but she hesitated at the sight of the Frey boys in chains behind him, living testament of a mother's sins turned on her own. The pause was enough. Jon Snow darted forward, knocking the poison loose. It shattered on the marble. Cersei shrieked, claws raking. Yet Jon pinned her arms while Seaworth lifted Tommen gently away. Robb sheathed his sword at last, the echoes of battle still pounding his ears like a drum of destiny. Ah, Kai, Adi Ninja. Dawn broke over King's Landing upon a city both liberated and terrified of its new masters. Small folk flocked to the charred sept of Baelor Steps where Stannis Baratheon, flanked by Melisandre's red robes billowing, pronounced judgment. Cersei Lannister to be tried for regicide by wildfire, should her guilt be proven. Tommen to be placed under the soft guard of the faith until the realm's lords could gather. Robb Stark, standing amid his tattered banners, found no triumph in their flutter. Around him, Northmen knelt to swear fealty anew, their whispers weaving his title with the scent of smoke. Yet his heart lay heavy, Grey Wind dead, thousands gone, and the north still scarred by ironborn raids and Bolton treachery. In the throne room, lit by shattered colored glass, Robb faced Stannis once more. The Iron Throne loomed behind them, spiked and forbidding. "I swore the North would be free to rule itself," Robb reminded. "And so it shall," Stannis answered. "A kingdom beneath the stars and snows, owing only the peace of borders and the aid of justice." He extended a parchment, an edict proclaiming northern independence under the ancient pact of Torrhen Stark, now reversed by the line of Baratheon. Robb took the vellum, thumb tracing the royal seal. Something within him eased, as though the wound on his shoulder found a salve deeper than leech or poultice. "And the Freys?" Stannis asked. "They will build the pyres for the dead at the Twins," Robb said. "Stone by stone, timber by timber, until every dishonored guest is avenged in peace." Stannis' stern face betrayed the faintest nod. "Then let justice be done." Ah, Kai. Mun. That night, in the quiet that follows cataclysm, Robb walked the Red Keep's ramparts alone. The city spread below, a patchwork of lantern lights, ash, and murmured prayers. He thought of Winterfell's hearths, of Bran and Rickon, exiled gods nowhere, of a dire wolf's howl lost in the rain at the Twins. Destiny had dragged him to the far southern edge of maps, drawn by Maester's quills, yet his soul yearned northward. A soft step behind him. Jon joined, hair whipped by river wind. "You'll leave soon," Jon said. "I must," Robb replied. "Home beckons, and the wounds here will take years to heal without a Stark's hand to salt them further. The South belongs to Stannis. The Wall belongs to you." "I broke my vows," Jon repeated, though now the words tasted of cold resolve, not doubt. "When the snows come, I'll answer for that." Robb clasped his brother's forearm. "When the snows come, the North will need every sword with a loyal heart." He managed a faint smile. "Not all kings wear crowns." Jon barked a soft laugh. Some settle for black. They stood side by side, silent, watching dawn's first light bloom over the Blackwater. Two wolves who had outrun death's designs, yet carried its shadow upon them. Beyond the river, smoke drifted where camps stirred. Within the city walls, bells tolled a cautious hope. The war was not over. Enemies still marched, grudges still festered, prophecies still coiled unseen. But for one breath, the realm balanced upon a blade's keen edge, honor against ambition, mercy against vengeance, brotherhood against a throne's jagged iron. Robb inhaled, tasting distant pine and near decay. Then he turned northward in his heart, dreaming of Winterfell, of hearth fires and falling snow, and of the long road yet to walk before true peace could claim its due. And somewhere across those stormlit leagues, the wind carried a howl. Not gray wind, but something older, colder, and watching. A taut hush blanketed King's Landing in the week that followed the wolf and stag assault, as if every cracked stone and blackened beam held its breath, waiting to learn whether the new order would steady or shatter beneath its own weight. The bells had ceased their fevered peals, but their echoes lingered, curling through alleys where 100 small acts of defiance still smoldered. Gold cloaks spitting lion sigils into gutters, septas whispering half-remembered hymns in candlelit corners. Butcher boys tugging at broken chains that once barred them from palace mark. Each dawn birthed rumor, and each dusk buried another corpse in the mass graves along the Roserad, lime dust veiling faces that would never again speak the names of fallen kings. Robb Stark did not linger in the Red Keep's high halls. He spent his mornings on the ramparts overlooking the city like a commander surveying half-tamed country. Charcoal roofs patch-mended by small folk, punctured ships beached on the mudflats, and the long jagged scar where wildfire jars had burst against the walls the night of their assault. He marked everything: numbers of masons setting new hoarding, length of queue at the grain wagons, clusters of sellswords drinking too deep at dawn. And each detail fed the quiet calculus in his mind. How long the wounded Northman could endure sour Dornish wine instead of hot broth. How many wagons he must claim for the return march. How best to bleed Lannister coffers dry without stripping King's Landing to famine. Stannis Baratheon, for his part, turned the Tower of the Hand into a tribunal. From sunrise to moonrise, he sat in a high-backed chair of black oak. Melisandre and Davos arrayed to either side, while petitioners trudged through a gauntlet of naked steel. In those first days, the line of the accused stretched from the tower steps across the inner ward. Butcher boys caught looting the lion wine cellars, gold cloaks who had murdered fleeing bakers, maesters who hoarded wildfire secrets, alchemists whose thumbed parchments spelled half the city's near ruin. For each case, Stannis demanded evidence as scrupulously as a maester counting barley grains, and for each he meted judgment as one might discard husks. Swiftness for petty crimes, measured mercy for coerced sin, and hard steel for the willfully cruel. Robb saw it, and though part of him bristled at the severity, he could not deny the order that followed. Coffers opened for grain, cutthroats found themselves weaving rope for city wells, and small folk, unbelieving, watched a lord's justice that named them worth more than coin. Yet beneath the surface of order, deeper currents churned. The Lannister networks of whisperers lay half intact, scuttling through cellars like cornered rats. Ravens still flew west, bearing desperate pleas for Tywin to descend in golden wrath. Bribes changed hands in midnight alcoves, as coin bought daggers, daggers bought silence. Somewhere beyond the Trident, the Lord of Casterly Rock gathered his banners, though reports from outriders spoke of supply lines choked by harassing guerrillas, blackfish sorties, brotherhood without banners ambushes, and Bolton turncloaks who bled their former allies at every wintering hamlet. Worse, disease traveled with the lion host, a fever of lungs that wet the straw of 100 levy wagons with pink-flecked spittle. Still, Tywin was coming. All knew it. On the 8th day after Dawn's victory, Robb convened council in the small hall that opened onto the Maiden Vault Gardens. The air smelled of crushed rosemary where Jon had trampled a hedge to clear Archer's sightlines. Bees fussed around blasted rose bushes that dared bloom amid ruin. A narrow table held rough maps, No meticulous maester's vellum, but scavenged parchment stitched from sailcloth and torn ledgers. Around it stood commanders who had never expected to share a room. Great John Umber, coat splashed with green where wildfire had kissed him. Lord Davos, stump-fingered drum tapping the tabletop. Lady Mage Mormont in scarred boiled leather. Sir Barristan Selmy, white cloak freshly laundered but frayed at the hem. Sir Brynden Tully bearing a raven's quill. And dour Lord Alester Florent, his eyes flicking suspicion at Stannis arrived last, Melisandre gliding behind like red shadow. The flaming heart banner pinned to her shoulder glittered in the lamplight. Robb greeted the older king with a curt nod and began without ceremony. "Reports place Tywin within 10 days' march," he said, voice pitched steady though his shoulder ached beneath new-grown scabs. "He travels heavy, 30,000 foot and half that horse. Carts laden with grain and siege engines. Our scouts count fewer outriders than weeks prior. Plague has thinned them. But Plague is as loyal as any bannerman. It will feast on us too." "Should we entangle him in close siege?" Lord Davos fingered the salt-stained knot on his collar. "Then best deny him siege. Strike before he lays lines. Ben so. Direct assault bleeds us first," Lady Mormont growled. "We hold 12,000 axes fit to march. Half-bare wounds from this city's taking. Edwin's fingers purchased our crossings, but will not buy a pitched field," Blackfish added. "Casterly discipline holds even when their lungs drown in blood. Break their fodder before they near the city. Razed farms, emptied granaries, poisoned wells." Robb tapped 2 knuckles on the map where the Roserad wound between orchard-dotted hills. "My riders can raise 3 supply caravans for every day Tywin delays his column to guard them. But each ruined orchard starves small folk who now look to us for mercy. I swore the North would not trade lion cruelty for wolf." Greyjohn barked laughter. "Mercy? Aye. Give it to our own first. Feed Lannister grain to the city, burn what we cannot haul. Burn it, and you create ashes Tywin need not guard," Davos retorted. "A foe who has shed freight turns swift." Stannis' voice cut through clamor like drawknife on pine. "Enough." All eyes fell quiet. Strategy is a smith's craft. Heat, hammer, quench. Our heat is the city's hunger. Hammer Tywin's heart from 2 sides. I lead the storm host north across Blackwater Rush. Shatter his vanguard near Southhorn. Deny him the King's Road Bridge. Stark rides west along the Gold Road with half his horse. Your Greyjohn and Mormont. Strike supply camps, then fall southward, luring him to muddy banks where plague and hunger ride with him. When he divides his force to answer both wounds, we crush the weaker host in turn. Bender roll. Robb's brows knit. Divide our banners while theirs remains larger? Divide their purpose, Stannis corrected. He looked to Melisandre, whose red eyes flickered like coals behind a paper screen. "The Lord of Light tests alloys by fire. Tywin shall be tested." Robb leaned over the map. He traced distances with calloused finger, weighing risk. 10 years of wardship at Winterfell had taught him swords. 1 brutal year of war had taught him coin and grain, and the price of mistakes. He exhaled. "We will need bridges over the Rush within 5 days." "I have barges," Davos offered. "And I have Frey masons who value their sons' necks," Robb said. "They will lay planks faster than a sail can hoist sailcloth." The council took the plan as a blacksmith lifts glowing steel. Wary but resolved. Orders flew with the buzz of angry hornets. Pages sprinted along trashed corridors. Black-robed ravens launched from tower cages. By dusk, the square below the Great Sept bustled with men fixing harness and sharpening axe-heads. In the torchlit gloom, giant shadows marched across Sept walls, spectral armies preparing for dawn. That night Robb stood at Arya's garden fountain, where shattered marble wolves lay amid pond scum. He fingered a scrap of cloth, yellow, embroidered with a crimson lion, that he had cut from a fallen banner in Fleabottom. It felt strangely soft, almost childlike, at odds with the image it bore. He thought of Tyrion Lannister, the dwarf who had once warned Catelyn Stark that war swallowed destinies whole. Thought of Jaime, rumored still a prisoner at River Run, yet whose sword hand had shaped half this war's birth. In a flash Robb pictured himself riding north, settling hearth fires, forging trade anew, yet always the memory of this city, of Frey arrows whistling in a rain-soaked hall, would gnaw like an untended wound. Justice demanded wages, peace demanded more. Soft steps approached. Jane emerged from the gloom. Hair braided tight, eyes glinting with lamplight. She wore a simple linen gown, sleeves rolled to elbows, as if she had come from nursing tents. "You ride soon," she said. He nodded. "Southwest first. Then north again, if gods are kind." She swallowed. "And Grey Wind's bones? We never buried him." "Dow." Robb closed his eyes. In the darkness he saw the direwolf's final snarl, bolts bristling from matted pelt, firelight dancing on glassy eyes. They rest at the Twins, where he fell. "When I return north, I will put him beneath Winterfell's heart tree." Jane stepped closer, slipping her hand into his unscarred palm. "Come back," she whispered. "Whatever banners you chase, whatever crowns you shun, come back alive." He brushed damp hair from her brow. "I will." The lie tasted like honey laced with steel, half sweet, half fatal. For war promised nothing. Okay. 3 days later, before dawn streaked the sky in pink and ash, the gates of King's Landing sighed open once more. Stannis' host, 18,000 gaunt Stormlanders, Lyseni sails on foot, and the grim knights of the march, tramped out first, banners limp in the pre-dawn calm. Behind churned Devos supply wagons creaking with rope-bound barrels and salt cod dye. Red Woman's acolytes scattered ashes on the muddy ruts, chanting of dawn's rebirth through flame. Robb watched them vanish downriver before he mounted his own horse, an iron-gray courser named Stone after the bastard name of the Vale. At his back rode Greyjon, half his head still shaved where a wildfire spark had scorched hair, Lady Mormont astride a dapple mare, and Jon Snow, mailed in blackened plate scavenged from a dead Kingsguard, his bastard's cloak replaced by the direwolf banner he had once stitched as a boy. 2,000 Northmen followed, plus 4,000 Riverlanders under Lord Piper and Lord Mallister, their levy numbers swollen by smallfolk, who preferred wolf justice to lion. They rode west along the Gold Road in driving mist. Cherry trees stood stripped by looters, farmsteads gaped like broken teeth. At each hamlet Robb left a half-day's bread and casks of rainwater drawn from city cisterns. His riders had scrawled the stark sigil on barn doors, a silent promise that winter's wolves paid their debts in feed as well as blood. The small folk stared, hollow-cheeked, but many trudged forward with peeled apples, salted boar strips, or buckets of iron nails, offerings for men they hoped were liberators. Long after the column passed, children would scratch crude wolves on fence posts, a sign whispered by old women in smoky kitchens. The North remembers its friends. On the 5th day, scouts returned with word of a Lannister vanguard encamped near the ruins of Hayford. 500 knights under Seradam Marbrand had detached from Tywin's main army to screen the Gold Road crossings. They feasted on cattle seized from local herds, while sentries dozed under rain-slick cloaks. Robb's nose flared at the waist. Greyjon growled like a chained hound. Night fell moonless. Robb assembled 200 silent riders, Mormont women with axes wrapped in wool, Piper longbowmen, and a dozen masterless hedge knights, eager to trade allegiance for plunder. They circled east, through abandoned orchards where wind rattled hanging skeletons of fruit. At the hour before dawn, wolf hour, they struck. Arrows hissed like sleet through damp air, punching through tent canvas. Long axes bit into girths and tether poles, sending war horses screaming loose in panic. Marbrand sentries shouted warnings too late. Flaming pitch-dipped torches arced into hobbled supply wagons, and greasy smoke billowed. Amid chaos Robb and Jon swept in from the south, swords flashing red in reflected firelight. Jon caught a knight across the faceplate, splitting visor and skull. Robb's blade hacked saddle straps, unhorsing their riders to drown in mud. By rising sun the vanguard lay broken. 300 slain outright, the rest limping for Tywin with tales of shadow wolves and storm demons. Robb ordered the captured banners rolled, The Lannister lions replaced with a pine branch. Silent code to Blackfish scouts that the road was clear. He freed surviving stable boys, gave them each a copper for every horse recaptured, and sent them home more coin-rich than they had ever dreamed. His men fed the cattle to hungry peasants. Word flew faster than ravens. The young wolf spares children, feeds small folk, and leaves golden corpses in his wake. 2 days later, the Northmen reached the Trident's lesser ford, where Tywin's baggage trains would cross. The river ran low, its banks scored by recent wheels and hooves. Robb surveyed the churned mud, considered spiking the ford with caltrops or collapsing the upstream bank. But every tactic risked flooding villages downstream. Instead, he rode to a nearby hillock, crowned by crumbled watchtower stones. From its height he could spy dust clouds many leagues west, the lion host. That night, around a smokeless fire pit, Robb convened Jon, Greatjon, and Lady Mormont. They spoke in hushed tones lest sound carry through dewy grass. Overhead, stars wheeled like shards of ice. "Tywin is slower than we thought," Robb began. "Marbrand survivors limp back through bogs. They'll not meet the main host for 2 days. We have time enough to strike the grain wagons stalled at Tumbler's Falls." Greatjon cracked knuckles. Another leap at the lion's throat. "Good." Lady Mormont frowned. "We've marched hard. Men's boots rot, horses founder. One fight too many, and we bleed traction." Jon quietly added, "Tywin expects pursuit. A desperate animal turns. If we chase too close, he may feint retreat and swallow us on ground he chooses. Then?" Robb weighed their counsel. "If we harry him lightly, torch fodder, loose casualties, he will tighten formation and crawl. That buys Stannis more time to meet him from the north." Greatjon spat. "Stormlander will want glory stroke. Let him. We crack ribs so he may pierce heart." Robb's gaze lingered on distant torch glimmers along the horizon. "We'll ride in 3 small talons. 50 bow, 50 axe, 30 horse each. Strike, then scatter into the scrub. Keep our banners hidden. Let him fear the woods themselves." Nando onshore. Over 3 days, Robb's talons sliced like flint shards. They burned haystacks stacked for war horses, emptied leather sacks of oat groats into the rush, and unyoked draft teams before cutting traces so wagons mired wheels deep in turf. At dusk they played ghost, arrows fluttering from hedgerows, curses echoing across fields, then silence as riders vanished into coppice. Tywin's outriders found only footprints dissolving in creek beds and headless lions painted crude red on white shields, nailed to tree trunks as warnings. Phantom fear crept into bright-plated columns. Men began to mutter of the old gods walking south in wooden skins. Yet war is a pendulum, one moment advantage, the next a brutal backswing. On the 6th morning, as Robb's talons skirted a bend in the rush, trumpets blared from behind a low ridge. Lannister outriders erupted. 400 light horse under Sir Kevan Lannister, who had spurred hard up a lesser track to flank the raiders. Spears leveled, men screamed, hooves thundered. Robb wheeled stone toward a thorn break rimmed by marshy pools. Bullets of wet earth spattered his chest. Around him Riverlanders balked. A Mormont woman fell with a shaft in her thigh. Jon Snow, riding abreast, caught Robb's eye. Without words they split. Robb veered left, drawing half the pursuers. Jon right, skirting reed beds. Arrows hissed in both wakes. Greatjon's deep roar sounded somewhere behind, rallying northerners to form boarhead wedge. The field dissolved into pockets of whirling melee. Mud clung to greaves, reeds twisted reins, and sunlight flashed on crimson cloaks amidst drab furs. Robb leaned low, urging stone along a game trail that ducked beneath willow limbs. He felt Lannister horsemen closing. He could sense their hot breath. A rangy sergeant lunged, spear point singing past Robb's thigh. Robb slammed his shoulder into the haft, snapping it, then spun his longsword backward through the man's neck, in a spray that spattered willow leaves dark crimson. He pressed on, yet for each foe he felled, 2 more appeared. Horn calls wound ever nearer. The wolves were hunted now. At a rocky outcrop above a chalk ravine, Robb yanked stone to a halt. Only 10 riders clung at his heels, his talons shredded. He scanned the gully below, A shallow stream, banks pocked with rabbit holes, and beyond that a rise thick with stunted oaks. Could be ambush ground, but could likewise trap them. Hoofbeats rattled stones behind. Sir Kevin himself topped the ridge, white mane of hair streaming. He raised his voice. "Robb Stark, yield, and you will see Winterfell again." Robb met the lion's gaze across 20 paces of air. He saw no cruelty there, only iron duty. In another life, Kevin might have been friend to Eddard Stark. In this life, he was proxy for the crossbow bolt that felled Grey Wind. Robb's answer was the northern warhorn call, a rolling growl echoing from his men's throats. Kevin's hand lifted. Archers stepped forward. Then mingled horns resounded from the oak rise opposite, deeper, brazen, unmistakable. Great Joan's charge. Out from the scrub thundered 200 riders, axes aloft, their mounts flecked with river mud. At their fore thundered Mage Mormont, eyes ablaze. They smashed into Kevin's flank like a boulder hurled by giants. Spears cracked, horses screamed, the Lannister formation buckled. Robb seized the moment. "Forward," he roared. He and his battered talon plunged down the chalk slope, hitting the gully like a fist. On the far bank, Riverlander bowmen rose from foxholes they had dug nights prior. Sappers under blackfish cunning. Shafts flew into Lannister backs. Chaos spiraled outward. Kevin tried to rally. He cut down 3 assailants, but a Mallister spear pierced his mount, tumbling horse and rider. The fight ended swiftly thereafter. Lannister survivors broke east, only to run into trappers, snaring foot with barbed chains. By noon the gully lay knee-deep in churned sludge and red froth. Robb dismounted near the fallen Kevin, whose breastplate dented inward where hooves had trampled. The older man's eyes fluttered. "Mercy," Kevin whispered. "For my men." Robb crouched, torn between honor and vengeance. "Yield the lion host's plans." "They march," Kevin gasped. "No diversion, no trickery. Tywin comes. He knows Stannis moves to flank. He means to draw you both into the Rush Valley, then open wildfire pits buried in the chalk. The pyromancers ride with him." Robb's pulse hammered. He would burn half his own men. "For victory," Kevin rasped. "And for my son." Pain flickered across his brow. "M.A." Robb's jaw hardened. Kevin's love for Jaime mirrored his own for Jon, for Bran, for Rickon. War turned such bonds into shackles. "Your son yet breathes at River Run," Robb said, "though reports were days old. If you speak truth, perhaps both sons will live." Kevin closed his eyes. "Then let him live. I yield." Robb signaled a healer. "Yeah, hey." The prisoners were secured, wounded tended, and victory horns carried across valley. Yet joy proved brittle. Tywin's wildfire trap changed every calculus. Robb summoned captains by torch under a storm-thick sky. Maps redrawn, scouts dispatched. Lightning forked distant hills. In its ghostly flash, they saw their own faces smeared with blood and river silt. Ghosts of men who had survived one more day by coin's thickness. "Stannis must be warned," Robb told Jon once council scattered. "If Tywin draws him near hidden pits." He shook his head. "I'll ride," Jon offered. "You're wounded," Robb said, noting the shallow slice on Jon's rib. "Rest, tonight. At dawn, take 20 horse south along the brush ridge, past Mandermill. Davos will meet you halfway." "Da." Jon nodded, though hesitation lingered. "You trust Davos?" He trusted seaborne smugglers, honor to speak truth to kings. That is no small thing. Robb clasped Jon's forearm. "Go, and keep Ghost of my Wolf at your flank." "Okay." While Jon carried warnings, Robb turned north to intercept Tywin's outriders once more. For 3 nights, they danced along the Rush's meanders, each side probing, slashing, withdrawing. Rain fell in sheets, swelling the river, bogging oxen carts. Fever stalked damp tents. Robb lost 20 men to lung rot, Tywin likely twice that. But plague cared nothing for banners. At dawn they buried their dead beneath sodden cairns, neither side pausing to mourn. On the fourth morning, smoke smudged the horizon behind Robb's riders. Thick, oily plumes. A scout galloped with word. Columns of black reek rose from Tywin's rear wagons, set afire by unknown saboteurs. Another breathless messenger claimed Bolton's shields glimpsed in the blaze, the flayed man snarling crimson against sulphurous dusk. Robb's heart clenched. If Roose played false again, no doubting. Reports after the twins said Bolton fled north, hunted by Mormont outriders. Yet their sigils now circled Tywin's baggage. Puzzle pieces tumbled. That night, thunder roared like giants brawling. Robb stood under a sagging ridge tent, hood dripping. Jon had not returned. Winds likely delayed him. Morale frayed like damp wool. Food stores dwindled. Horses limped on swollen fetlocks. And still lightning bared distant fields where thousands of campfires glimmered. Tywin's host, a slow, relentless tide. Robb's thoughts drifted to Winterfell's godswood, to quiet snows, to Bran's wide-eyed stories of gargoyles. Across leagues of misery, he heard a child's voice ask whether ravens remembered summer. He swallowed, tasting rain and ash. If he fell here, who would tell Bran that wolves could yet outrun fire? Soft footfalls behind. Greyjohn parted the tent flap. Lord. Riders approach. Banners unknown, but carry truce flag. Robb snatched gloves, followed. In the storm-lashed dark, he saw 3 cloaked figures escorted by Mormont axes. Their banner, a linen sheet torn from some maester's pallet, bore a crude white tree sigil on gray. The middle figure threw back hood, a woman, cheeks raw from wind, red hair plastered. She knelt in mud. "I am Lady Cybella Glover," she said, voice hoarse. "Deepwood Moat stands free. We ride to pledge sword trees to the king in the north." Shock rippled among Robb's captains. Deepwood Moat had fallen to Ironborn months gone. Cybella squeezed gloved fist around hilt. "Asha Greyjoy fled our spears." Cybella continued. "Your uncle Galbart hunts her ships beyond Bear Isle. We broke their chain at Saint's Shield and reclaimed the keeps. The north rises, my king. Send us word and we will march south with every man who can heft axe." "Then so." Robb's breath steamed. In that moment, exhaustion melted before a surge of wild, fierce hope. The north was not broken. Wolves howled still. He knelt in turn, palms caked with mire, and met her eye. "Rise, Lady Cybella," he said. "Tell your riders. We hold the line here so the north may breathe. You are the gust of home upon this charnel wind." A stir ran through the assembled men. For the first time in weeks, shoulders straightened. Robb ordered fires stoked higher despite rain. Supplies shared. Cybella's riders brought fresh venison, smoked trout, and a cask of white winter wine from Bear Isle cellars. That night, the camp crackled with cautious laughter. Jon returned near dawn, soaked and weary but alive. He reported that Davos had reached Stannis across river. Plan revised. Stormlord would swing north earlier. Cross at an unguarded ford upriver to avoid wildfire pits. Robb clasped his shoulder, heart lighter. The pendulum swung again. Oh. In a field of flattened barley south of Zow's Horn, Stannis met Tywin at last. Dawn painted clouds melon pink, but the day's script ran red. Davos barges had slipped men across the rush at night. Stormlanders dug earthworks by torch while Lannister scouts searched futilely westward. When horns blared at sunrise, stag banners rose behind fresh-cut stakes, forming a crescent anchored on the river. Tywin's van, already weakened by plague and lack of fodder, crashed into sharpened pikes. Wildfire pits lay useless, buried miles south. The old lion cursed, realized he'd been outmaneuvered, and called retreat to regroup on Dry Ridge. Robb attacked then, sweeping in from northeast with talon after talon, striking supply wagons and loose cavalry units. From his saddle, he glimpsed Stannis atop a rise. Sword raised, Melisandre's crimson cloak, swirling like flame-torn standard. Thunder of hooves, clash of steel, chaos devoured dawn. Greatjon drove into the flank of Lannister pikemen, roaring songs of summer feasting. Lady Mormont's shield maidens carved through crossbow lines, splitting crank handles and collarbones. Jon and Robb fought back-to-back at center, where a swirl of enemy knights tried to cut the wolf from the stag. Jon's bastard blade Longclaw sheared through gilt lion helms. Robb's sword Frostbite, so named by men after the twins, flashed white under Wintercloud's sun. The battle teetered. Tywin's second son, Sir Davin, rallied fresh horse from rear, slamming into Baratheon right. Stormlander spears buckled. But then a clarion call sounded from the river, a horn of ancient, deep timbre. Across silver water surged rowboats, Blackwood archers in dark cloaks, summoned by Raven days earlier, now raining shafts into Lannister backs. Panic spread. Lines wavered. Atop center ridge Tywin himself rode, crimson cloak whipped. He saw the collapse unfolding, saw barrels of wildfire still miles south, saw his sons scattered, his supply train ash. For one heartbeat Robb met the old lion's gaze across broken field. In those pale green eyes burned defiance, calculation, and something like bleak respect. Tywin raised a horn, blew 3 notes, turned. Retreat. Trumpets echoed command. Half the army had strength to obey. The rest sagged into rout. Northmen and Stormlanders pursued only so far. Robb recalled Grey Wind's lessons. Wounded lion still claws. By duskground was theirs. Fires burned where carts smoldered. Wounded moaned beneath makeshift awnings. Tywin had escaped with a corps of veterans, retreating west across the Blackwater. But his threat to the capital lay broken. Stannis' maesters counted corpses. 1,800 Northern and Stormlander dead, near 5,000 Lannister slain or captured. Among prisoners were Sir Davin, half mad with grief, and a dozen alchemists whose wildfire stores had fallen unlit into wolf paws. Robb stood amid fields hush, rain pattering charred grass. He was streaked head to heel in gore, hair matted, shoulder wound reopened. Yet within his chest beat fierce triumph, threaded by mourning. He knelt in mud as maesters bandaged a gash on Jon's arm. Together they looked across carnage. "It's done," Jon murmured. "No," Robb said, voice barely wind. "Wars end, then tasks begin." He gestured across field. "These dead, Northmen, Stormlanders, Lionmen, they will feed crows unless we dig. And after holes are filled, we rebuild roads, sow new grain, mend the heart." Jon's brow furrowed. "Is that a king's work, or a farmer's?" "Both." Robb's lips twisted in wry smile. "Winter may spare the South this year, but the North still remembers hunger. I would see no child South or North know it again." "Okay. Undanjay." In weeks that followed, Robb and Stannis oversaw burial mounds and prisoner exchanges. The Frey hostages penned letters under watchful Mormont eyes, promising recompense for every sept burned, each orphaned child. Tywin sued for truce, claiming plague demanded mercy. Stannis agreed to cease pursuit on condition Cersei stand trial, within a moon and wildfire stores be surrendered for destruction. Robb cared little for trials. His eyes were fixed homeward. Before departure, Robb met Stannis one last time at the ruins of Zau's Horn Tower, riverwind rustling dry grass. Melisandre watched from distance, expression unreadable. "You ride north," Stannis said. "Winter's mouth gapes. I feel its breath." "Nendataman." Robb inclined head. "And you will rule south." "I will mend it." Stannis' gaze pierced, as if measuring Robb's soul for cracks. "Honor's a nail. Drive it too deep and board splits. Hold too loose and plank drifts. Keep it steady, Stark." Robb offered gauntleted hand. Stannis clasped, a rare flicker of bleak humor lighting his eyes. "If Ironborn trouble your shores again," Stannis said, "send word. Bastards or not, I still claim mastery of seas." Robb smiled thinly. "And if lions haunt your gate, Call the wolves." They parted. Stormlanders cheered their king. Northmen raised axe hafts to sky. Summer's last cicadas rasped, foretelling frost. K. Robb's march north was slower than his flight south had been. He chose it so. To see the land he had bled, to pay Wergild in coin and healing hands. At Duskendale, he left half his plundered silver to rebuild docks. At Maidenpool, he ordered a new infirmary staffed by northern leeches and storm maesters. Half-starved fisherfolk stared as his men hauled crates of smoked trout from Sabella's stores, laying them as tithe upon cracked quay stones. Mallister carpenters repaired river bridges with timber purchased by Frey ransom. Children trailing the column began carving small wooden wolves, painting them white, and gifting them to soldiers, who tied them to belt loops like talismans. South of Harrenhal ruins, Blackfish rejoined with surviving river lords. He reported Jaime remained prisoner, though rumors spoke of Brienne of Tarth planning some covert barter. Robb told him guard the westerly passes, watch Tywin's retreat. Come winter, Red Fork ice would bar armies anyway. Crossing at the Twins proved eerie. Fragments of charred beams, blackened rubble. The once grand towers gutted. Walder Frey, true to edict, remained caged in his own courtyard. Robb passed without comment. Edwin still lacked 2 fingers, but the bridges were repaired enough for crossing. Northmen spat into the river as they rode, muttering prayers to drowned spirits of houseless kin. At last, on a frost-sharp morning with leaves turned gold and copper, they sighted Winterfell's broken towers. Smoke drifted. Scent of pinewood fires, not war. Cranes dotted skyline. Lady Barbary Dustin Smiths raising new roof beams, Sabella Glover's men mortaring stone. The courtyard thronged with scarlet-coated Manderley stewards, black-furred Blackwood carpenters, and flints from widows watch-hauling limestone blocks. Bran's carved weirwood door had been salvaged, rehinged. The godswood itself, untouched by iron flames, awaited. Robb dismounted before the gate he'd last seen in youth's spring. He felt older than the granite beneath his feet. A hush fell over laborers as he stepped through archway. Then a lone horn sounded. Mellow. Workers knelt. Voices hushed. The young wolf had returned. Jon rode beside, eyes wide with wonder and hurt. They shared ache for what once was, and gratitude for what yet stood. In the great hall, Maester Luwin's successor, a mild man named Eirik, prepared simple meal. Barley broth with leeks, oat bread tender rabbit. Robb ate little. He yearned for air beneath Hearttree. Night fell quick. Autumn's breath chilled flagstone. He left the hall, cloak drawn high, Jon at his flank. Past silent walls, they walked into Godswood, where moonlight dappled red leaves like blood on fresh snow. The Hearttree's face watched, tears of sap glistening. Robb knelt, unsheathed frostbite, set blade across roots. Jon mirrored, Longclaw reflecting silver. Robb closed eyes. He let memories flood, Bran laughing on bow, Rickon chasing Shaggy Dog, Sansa's songs drifting, Arya's wooden sword clacking, Father's voice reading ancient tales. He let gray winds howl rise inside, until tears blurred leaf glare. He bowed forehead to cool bark. "I am home," he whispered. "But Winterfell is more than stone. Bind me to its root." In silence, broken only by distant forge hammer, Robb Stark swore oath anew, to guard north, to spare weak, to avenge wrong, to sow peace where wolves once howled only for woo. He felt Jon's breath beside, felt realm's weight lighten, not vanish. Time slipped away. At length Jon spoke, voice trembling. "Snow falls beyond wall. I must return, to answer vows, and for danger dawning." Robb rose, placed hand on brother's shoulder. "I will come, when north is mended. We face long night as brothers. You are wolf, whatever cloak you wear." Mendem Sater. Jon's eyes shone. They clasped forearms beneath red leaves. Ice winds sighed through branches, carrying ghostly howl of distant direwolf. And maybe, just maybe, Grey Wind's spirit answered, proud and free. Ka. Frost hardened over weeks, Manderley trade wagons rolled with grain. Barrowton smiths fashioned new plowshares from melted lion armor. And ravens brought word that Stannis had crowned Tommen as ward of the realm, to be fostered at Storm's End until manhood. Cersei's trial set for spring, though whispers said she plotted escape. Tywin remained at Casterly Rock, his power dimmed but not quenched. One evening, Robb stood atop repaired Winterfell battlements beside Jean, her belly just beginning to swell with their first child. Sunset-painted wall and village orange. Children played in Bailey. Smell of baking meat pies drifted. "What will we name him?" Jane asked, hand covering womb. "He or she," Robb corrected gently, smiling. "For a boy, Deddard maybe. For a girl, Lyanna or Cailin." Wind tugged her hair. She leaned against parapet. "Will peace last?" Robb considered horizon where gray clouds massed. "Peace is harvest. You must work it daily or weeds reclaim." He turned to her. "But this seedbed is ours now. I'll hoe it until hands bleed." Below, wolves howled. The offspring of gray wind's north-run mate perhaps, or wild cousins scenting winter. Their cries blended with distant hammer, children's laughter, and the hush of falling leaves. It was music of renewal, born of ruin yet reaching skyward. Robb closed his eyes, let it sink deep. Somewhere across leagues of ice and stone, Jon Snow rode toward the wall, bearing news of lions tamed, wildfire spent, and wolves returned. South, Stannis reforged governance on pillars of harsh justice, softened, at times, by Davos' quiet wisdom. West, Tywin plotted, but with less breath, fewer sons, and new caution. The realm trembled on cusp of long night, yet flame and fang now guarded it together. A northern king without a crown, a southern king without a throne forged by birthright, rather than conquest. Between them stretched truce, not perfect, but tempered. Robb Stark exhaled mist. In his chest, the wound of loss throbbed still, but around it grew scar tissue of purpose. A king not of red carpets or jeweled orbs, but of frost-hard soil and hearthfire. Far above, first snowflake spun from black sky, alighting on Jane's sleeve. She laughed softly, as though blessed by sky's own hand. Winter's first kiss. Robb's hand covered hers, and not the last. Together they watched snow dance over Winterfell's reborn towers, cloaking broken stones in white promise. In that hush, between heartbeats, Robb believed that even in lands forever torn by swords, hope could take root, if tended by wolf steadfastness and stag resolve, watered by the tears of those lost, guarded by brothers unbowed. So the story paused, for wars slumbered yet, and shadows gathered beyond bitter seas. But in the north, beneath blood-red leaves, a candle of peace flickered against the coming dark, shepherded by a king who once survived a hall of treachery, and marched south with hostage chains to teach the realm anew the price and gift of honor. And the cold wind carried his vow across silent fields. Winter will remember. Winter's first kiss dusted the ramparts all night, settling into every gap newly mortared between Winterfell's stones. By dawn the castle shimmered beneath a gauze of white, quiet enough that even the forge fires crackled with restraint. Robb rose before the sun, as he had every day since returning, and crossed the silent courtyard to make his rounds. New banners, fresh-dyed dire wolves on snow-white cloth, hung limp in the stillness, already stiffening with frost. When he drew close, he brushed a gauntleted knuckle across one standard's edge, and found his own breath frosting on its surface, as though the castle itself exhaled beside him. He began with the stables. Old Hob, pipe clenched between teeth, was seeing to stone's feed. He greeted his king with a simple nod. No one in Winterfell made much of Robb's rank. Respect was woven here in tasks finished before the cold-set bone. The horses, too, cared little for crowns. They greeted him with snorts, seeking oat and reassurance. He lingered, running fingers along Stone's neck, soothing the gelding's nerves after weeks of relentless marching. The animal had lost weight despite daily rations, Robb resolved to allocate more fodder from the freshly arrived Manderley barges. From the stables he crossed to the armory yard, where Jory Castle's cousin Hallis oversaw a crew of blacksmiths, repurposing battered Lannister plate into plowshares. When Robb stepped forward, sparks leapt off curved steel, scattering like miniature comets across trampled snow. Hallis wiped his brow. "We'll have 20 plow blades by week's end, m'lord. Earth's gone hard, but spring'll need 'em." Robb clapped his shoulder. "Good. Send the first 10 to Widow's Watch." Lady Flint wrote of an early frost killing her tenants' tools. He nodded at a rack of unfinished blades. "The rest we stockpile here. If the Night's Watch calls for seed grain and plows, we'll answer." Hallis grinned through a soot-grimed beard. Lord. And the helms?" He pointed at a pyramid of cracked lion-head helmets deemed unfit for field. "Let the children melt them into toys," Robb said, then almost smiled at the thought. "Or melt them again for hinges. Anything but war." He left the smith still chuckling. Past the armory, he stepped inside the keep's newly thatched west wing, where Jane had arranged a dispensary for the wounded too frail to travel further. The corridor smelled of juniper, boiling willow bark, and faintly of ash from the hearths that burned day and night to keep fever at bay. An apprentice maester named Elric greeted Robb with a dry-inked ledger and gave the morning tally. 2 recovering Riverland archers fit for crutch duty, a Northman boy with frostbite along 3 toes, and a sprain set to knitting on the arm of a horn blower. "Nothing grave," Elric concluded, "but we could use more garlic to steep against infection. We've near emptied the stores." Robb promised caves of garlic from the Manderley soon enough. He halted at the bedside of the boy with frostbite, only 16, hair pale as sun-bleached straw, and spoke soft words, recounting the tale of a ranger who lost 2 fingers on the frost fangs, yet returned to climb the wall again each year. Each year. The boy's lips cracked a smile. Robb left him morsel of honeyed oatcake and moved on. Only once his rounds ended did he permit himself breakfast, oat porridge swimming in squares of dried apple, with a cutting of savory broth poured over for warmth. Jane found him on the dais, chewing thoughtfully while watching smoke drift beyond the open shutters. "I heard about the plowshares," she said, taking the bench beside him. "And Ned Umber has the children turning knobs out of old sword pommels. Soon Winterfell will be half ironmongery, half nursery." He caught her hand. "Do we have room left for a royal household?" "Royal." Her mouth tilted mischievous. "We never liked that word." He squeezed her fingers gently, gaze sliding to her modest swell. "We'll have room for everything that matters." After a beat, he added, "Quiet her. How do you fare this morning?" "Splendid." She lied for his sake, though shadows lined her eyes from restless sleep. "Maester Eirik says the babe is twice strong as most this season. Perhaps she takes after her father." "Or his mother," he returned. "Either way, when she learns to crawl, the castle may need higher walls." Jane laughed, then sobered. "There's new snow on the King's Road. Riders arrive from White Harbor at dawn. Wyman Manderley himself requests audience." "Nammed. Lord Wyman." Robb glanced beyond the shutters, where the morning brightened into flurrying sunshafts. "He seldom leaves his warm crypts. So we must offer him hotter fires," she said. "He waits in the great hall." Robb rose, slinging cloak. "Best welcome him. See what hopes stir him out of his seat." A moment later, his boots echoed along Winterfell's restored corridor, snow melt puddling where thralls laid rushes. Within the great hall, candles guttered and feasting benches lined the floor. Lord Wyman Manderley, vast as legend, wrapped in 3 layers of blue velvet trimmed with ermine, stood before the central hearth like a ship come to port. A brace of guards flanked him. Sir Marlon Manderley, lean and hawk-nosed, and a slender young woman Robb recognized as Willa, rumored more cunning than any maester. She wore sailor's breeches beneath a fur-trimmed vest, and met Robb's gaze with startling frankness. Robb strode between the benches. "Lord Wyman, your presence honors Winterfell. I trust your journey was safe." Wyman executed a bow that sent his chins rippling. "Grace of the Seven, or perhaps the old gods now, for they seem to favor you. kept the roads open. I travel slow, but snow rides slower. His voice rumbled deep, mellow as cask-aged brandy. Come to the solar, Robb invited. Warmth in seats with backs. He ushered the trio up the steps to the small council chamber, where a fresh-lit brazier glowed. Greatjon stood inside, arms crossed, and Lady Sabella Glover lingered by the window, having arrived earlier to share news of Deepwood Motted's reconstruction. Both dipped heads to the arriving lord. Once seated, Wyman wasted little ceremony. Your Grace, White Harbor has long balanced on a blade between the stag's justice and the lion's revenge. Now with Tywin Lannister licking wounds, we sense a turning of world currents. The south is Stannis to mend, or to mar, and he has offered us safe passage for trade along the newly dredged Mander. But old loyalties weigh heavy. I pledged my banners to King Torrhen Stark centuries before kneeling to the dragon. He clasped sausage-thick fingers. I have seen enough. White Harbor stands with the king in the north. Bane. Robb felt warmth flood his chest, rivaling brazier heat. Your harbor is the north's door to the world. With it open, we all breathe easier. He inclined head. Name your terms. Only two, Wyman said. First, we ask royal charter to mint coin bearing the direwolf on one face, merman on the other. Symbolic, but commerce flows easiest when stamped with trust. Second, we request your leave to assemble a war fleet, not for conquest, but to shield fishing lanes from iron-born raids, and to answer if the krakens grow bold again. Benante. Greatjon grunted approval. Sabella's expression smoothed, hint of relief. Robb considered. The north lacked true navy save for Manderley cogs and Bear Isle longships. A fleet would deter Greyjoy mischief and carry grain south, should famine strike. You shall have your charter, Robb said. And timber from the Wolfswood for your first 10 hulls. In return, Winterfell claims right of passage for our envoys aboard any Manderley vessel, bound to any port. Nanshaw. A fair bargain, Wyman agreed, eyes gleaming. One more gift we bring. Word that Stannis Baratheon plans a northern progress come spring. He seeks to witness the land he freed from Tywin's chains. Robb's brows rose. The north is not his to visit uninvited. Yet he aided its cause and holds Tommen ward. Courtesy demands we host him. Greatjon muttered. Courtesy can choke a man. But courtesy sometimes spares war. Sabella countered. Let the stag see our snows. Let him ride home humbled by distance. Mandawansen. Robb nodded. And by the strength of a free north. They spent hours framing logistics. Grain levies, stone shipments downriver, coin weights and alloys. By midday frost melted on the solar windows. When at last Wyman took his leave, promising feasts of spiced crab on their next meeting, Robb accompanied him to the yard. Snow fell thick now, blanketing Wyman's tracks almost before they formed. Sailors fussed over sledges loaded with parchment tubes. Harbor schematics, keel designs, merchant charters. Your Grace, Willem Manderley said quietly as her father inspected straps. There is more. She handed Robb a sealed leather pouch. From King's Landing. We netted it from a peddler bound north. My father wished you to read it privately. Robb thanked her, slipped the pouch inside cloak. After farewells, he watched the delegation depart through the east gate. Banners trailing like slow leviathans into swirling flake curtains. The yard quieted, only distant smith hammers rang. Returning indoors, he ducked into his solar, bolted door, and opened the pouch. A single parchment lay folded thrice, char-sealed with a broken lion sigil. Inside, in a hand he knew from earlier war letters, were 3 lines. Dark. Tywin dies soon. Plague or blade, the game ends. The shark within the bay circles. Shield your young. 10 eyes watch the north. Regard the rose. A. Dot. Aris Dot. The spider's script unmistakable. Robb read again, parsing cryptic edges. Shark within the bay. Who? Euron Greyjoy? Or Littlefinger's conspiracies? Regard the rose could hint at House Tyrell, Mace, or his cunning mother Olenna. Tywin dying, Rumors or truth? If true, the Western Lion might splinter under rival claimants. He burned the note in brazier, watched flame curl its secret. This realm bred new war from every ash pile. Yet he did not tremble. Forewarning gave chance to brace walls. By evening he convened his inner council. Greatjon, Cybella, Hallis representing Winterfell's logistics, and Maester Eirik. Snow rattled shutters. Candles cast pools of amber on tabletop laden with mapping rods, ledger stacks, and half a roasted boar gone cold. Robb relayed the note's essence in spare phrases. Tywin Lannister may not last the winter, he concluded. Power abhors emptiness. Casterly Rock could implode, or lash out one last time. Meanwhile, Ironborn lick wounds at Pike, yet Euron's silence breeds more worry than his boasting. If the north remains scattered, we invite 2 fronts of storm. Greatjon scowled. We need walls manned, a full levy on every house. That breeds hunger, Maester Eirik reminded. Fields need hands till snow deepens. Grain stores are lean despite manderly gifts. Cybella tapped knuckle to lips. Then we muster rotating watches, not full levies. 2 weeks in, 4 weeks home. Keeps morale and harvest both. Nembiro. Robb agreed. Send Raven to every bannerman with that plan. Meanwhile, I ride to Moat Cailin in 3 days. Inspect repairs. Ensure our gate to the south can close on any lion resurgence. Greatjon, you command Winterfell in my absence. Greatjon thumped chest. It will stand like bare-thick oak. Hallis. Robb turned. Accelerate roof beaming on vacant houses. Refugees from South keep trickling. No child sleeps in snow while I wear a cloak. Then? Try. My lord. Long into night, they strategized quotas, schedules, fallback beacons. Outside, snow piled. When the council dispersed, Robb ventured again to Godswood. Fresh drifts silenced every footstep, lending hush akin to cathedrals. At the heart tree he knelt as always, yet tonight he sensed company before he heard it. A soft crunch. Then Jon emerged between limb-thick trunks, cloak white dusted. You leave soon, Jon said, mirroring their talk weeks before. Moat Cailin only, Robb answered. Round trip. Then perhaps Barrowton to ease Flint farmland talk of dire shortages. Nemtur. Jon's eyes glinted in moonlight. The watch sends ravens. Empty-eyed ones roam the haunted forest again. More than in memory. Sam Tarly swears he saw dead bear walking. They need men and dragonglass. I'll send both. Manderly ships can bear obsidian from Dragonstone Quarry. The Night's Watch kept faith with us when southern kings shattered it. We repay. Jon stepped closer. Snow squeaking. Come spring, I head north of the wall with Lord Commander Mormont. If things worsen, I ride beside you, Robb finished. They clasped arms. Silent vow, bridging future peril. Jon broke the hold first, nodding once before slipping into shadow. Robb remained, letting flakes gather on his shoulders. He wondered whether the gods of these trees watched beyond living men's petty wars, waiting instead for darkness no crown could bribe. He pressed palm to the face carved in wood, rough lines cold against skin. The chill felt honest at least. Okay. Robb departed Winterfell at dawn 3 days later, escorted by 200 riders, and the banners of House Glover, House Manderly, and House Umber, a bright procession cutting through white fields. Jane stood on the gatehouse with Maester Eirik, one hand braced upon swollen belly, the other raised in farewell. Snowflakes haloed her hair like a circlet. Robb summoned a grin meant to reassure, but worry tugged inside. Tywin's shadow still reached long. Assassins could ride swift and silent. They spurred south across frigid moors, past the smoking falls where water hissed into icy pools, and camped the first night beneath roofless ruins of an ancient watchfort. Robb's quartermaster stoked a broad fire. Soldiers told bawdy tales, but Robb sat apart on a fallen lintel, rubbing shoulder-old wound. He slept light, hand on dagger, dreams haunted by gray wind trotting endless corridors. On the third afternoon they reached Moat Cailin, crumbling towers sunk into bog, causeway wrapped in mist. Northmen toiled rebuilding palisades, logs hauled from wet woods, stones dredged from swamp banks. At Hall's makeshift table, Castellan Roderick Forrester presented ledgers. Crossbow stock, salted fish, pitch barrels for siege kettles. Robb approved extra rations for crews, then toured ramparts where arrow slits gaped like toothless mouths. Everywhere reeds rustled, frogs croaked. Moat Cailin's very earth seemed to breathe decay, yet its clogging muck was North's first shield. That night, a courier galloped in from South Causeway, banner of House Reed. He bore parchment sealed with clasps shaped like smiling lizard lion. Robb unrolled it by lantern, few strokes but urgent. Young wolf, Ironman testing Shield Islands. Smoke on the neck. Reed's hairy but fleet thickens. Beware Southwater tide. Mirab. Robb frowned. Ironborn again. He summoned Forrester, drafted orders. Dispatch 5 outrider columns at dawn. Sweep coastal marsh hamlets, guard fisherfolk, and gather intelligence. Jones' worries, Tywin's death watch, Ironborn raids. It felt as though wolves snapped at every compass point. Before sleep he penned Raven to Winterfell, instructing Greatjon to triple shoreline towers watch, ready beacon pyres, and send Maester Eirik's calculations for storing tar in sealed clay pots, weapon against shipboard reavers. K. Come morning, wind shifted. Warm, laden with sea rot, hint of early thaw, though deep winter not yet claimed the land. Scouts rode out. Robb remained to oversee wall bracing. By midday the first outrider band returned, splattered in mud, leading 2 prisoners, ragged men with squid sigils, pinned sideways on cloaks as though their own house shamed them. They claimed scouting party for Captain Victorian, the outrider reported. Rest of crew anchored off Cape Kraken, repairing hull leak. Robb hauled one prisoner up by collar. Why test our shores again? The man's eyes darted, yet defiance flickered. King Euron dreams of dragons. Says North is rich in bones of them. He wants something sleeps night fires up there. Robb exchanged glance with Forrester. Dragons? Bones? Perhaps Greyjoy madness, but dragons indeed stirred in rumor. Deneries in distant east with 3 living beasts. Could Euron seek eggs rumored in Valyrian shipwrecks? Or was it simply ploy? He ordered the Ironmen held for Maester's questioning. If Greyjoys probed the neck, they risked alliance with any Lannister dissidents starving for coastal distraction. The next day, 2 more skirmishes flared along tidal creeks, reed boats harassing Ironborn longships wading through narrow channels. Robb rode out himself, leading lance of mounted archers across peat islets. He spied a black-sailed vessel run aground, listing like wounded Leviathan. Arrows studded her decks. The reeds, ghostly in frond camo, melted along banks, loosing shag-barbed shafts. When Robb's men arrived, the Ironborn survivors surrendered, kneeling amid arrow-littered reed beds. On deck they found cargo, sacks of stolen barley, a chest of ornate scroll cases marked with Lannisport sigils. War plunder originally bound for Casterly Rock, perhaps parted company during the retreat. Robb ordered holds searched. Beneath canvas coils they uncovered jars of emerald liquid. Wildfire. 6 crates, stamped with alchemist's rune. His blood chilled. If Euron meant to ply wildfire north, he intended more than coastal raids. Robb had the jars lifted with reed rope nets, moved at arm's length to muddy bank. Maester Forrester recommended submerging them in wet, cool marsh pits until safe disposal. Under gray sky, they buried volatile secrets. That night, campfires glowed dim behind screens of turf. Robb paced perimeter, senses wired to creek's gurgle. He felt war's breath anew. Despite walls built, chaos still slipped through cracks. Returning to his tent he found a small figure waiting. A girl in mottled cloak of grays and greens, hair a thicket of brown curls, eyes bright as fresh sap. Mira, read. No time for courtesies, she said. Voice soft, but urgent. Scouts sighted black sails doubling back, and they saw something else. A sail galley under Taroshi colors docking at the same cove. She flew a banner with golden roses. The Tyrells may be speaking to the Krakens. Robb frowned. Why would House Tyrell traffic with ironborn filth? Perhaps gold buys any ship when seas run red, she said. Or they serve someone behind them. Queen Margaery sits queenless since Tommen is ward. Her kin need leverage. Robb exhaled, white vapor coiling. Then our realm stays tinder dry. One spark, wildfire or Tyrell ambition, and all burns anew. We must douse it before flame. Then? He spent hours drafting letters. One to Stannis, warning of Tyrell Greyjoy whispers. One to White Harbor ordering dispatch of fastest warcog across Bight to harass ironborn convoys. One to Deepwood Moat for Lady Asha's status, ally or prisoner. He sealed each with direwolf wax. At dawn the neck steamed in pale sun, snow receding from boggrass. Robb's outriders drove ironborn skiffs eastward. Reeds collapsed ambush nets across narrow estuaries. Yet still, rumors flew of other longships nosing lonely beaches higher north. As days folded, a raven from Winterfell found Robb at Moat Cailin. Great John's terse scrawl, "Eddard has come early." For an instant, Robb's heart stuttered. Then he read the next lines, realizing Eddard referred to his newborn son. Arrived weeks sooner than the midwives predicted. Mother stable, babe strong. Great John wrote of lungs bigger than Summerhall itself, bawling louder than any direwolf pup. Robb's throat tightened. He longed to gallop home. Duty first. He sent back a scrap. Kiss his brow. Tell him his father rides weather. I bring peace, as swaddling. He folded the note, felt newfound fire kindle. Ironborn or Tyrell machinations could not steal his son's future. He redoubled inspections, oversaw Arrow Tower atop the tallest ruin. Carved new embrasures, personally walked every slingstone path to ensure garrisons could sprint unimpeded. One evening, a second messenger arrived. Cloak crusted in rime, face gray with fatigue. He carried banner of House Blackwood and letter, bearing Stannis' seal. Robb read by lamplight. Tywin Lannister dead at Casterly Rock. Fever took him after infected wound. His daughter, Lady Jenna, assumed regency for half-starved West. Factions already vying. Stannis counseled calm. With Old Lion gone, realm's western roar dimmed. But other roars quicken. Robb's eyes lingered over Stannis' final line. I ride north come first thaw, with Tommen and Dragonsglass in tow. We face white winds soon. Dragonglass shipments indeed. Stannis upheld his promise. Robb felt wary awe. The Stormlord, once stern rival, now real ally. He spent late night at his writing desk, drawing broad arcs on a tattered map. The Wall, Winterfell, Deepwood Moat, White Harbor, Moat Cailin, each note of defense and supply. He penciled dotted lines representing potential Greyjoy approaches, Tyrell spies, sellsword fleets, wildling migration. Overall, he sketched jagged arrow from the land of always winter southward, the other's menace beyond comprehension. Morning found his ink clotted, head on forearms, candle guttered dry. But he woke with clear resolve. Unify northern houses fully, build coastal fleet, fortify Moat Cailin and the last river crossing, and stockpile grain for a 2-year siege. The wolf would not be taken unprepared again. Robb returned to Winterfell with only half escort. Rest stayed at Moat Cailin. He rode faster than the snowstorm chasing, covering leagues by plugging dawn to dusk. Each night he bivouacked in shepherd crofts, sharing stew with small folk, handing coppers to children who traced wolf emblems across frosted windows. Near last hearth he paused to answer invitation from Lord Umber the Younger, Greatjon's brother. A feast of roast aurochs awaited. Meat heavy and spiced, mead served in oak bowls. Amid raucous hall, Robb learned of ghost stories from east of Last River. White shadows glimpsed near ruined watchposts, dogs refusing to set paw beyond certain line. It spurred him to allocate extra patrols along forested border. A week later, Winterfell's towers rose through swirling snow. Robb felt jolt in chest seeing them, as though crossing threshold of dream. Gates opened. Great John boomed greetings from atop walkway, voice echoing. Children scampered across yard. Inside the great hall, Jane waited on dais, babe swaddled in cream-dyed wool. She looked tired but radiant, hair-hallowing cheeks flushed with constant hearth heat. Robb crossed floor in swift strides. When she placed the bundle in his arms, weight near startled him. Tiny but heavy with life not of war. The boy blinked, unfocused. Yet when Robb spoke low, nonsense about snowflakes dancing, eyes stilled as if listening. Robb felt tears but blinked them away, pressing lips to soft brow. Eddard, Jane whispered. He sleeps little. Hungry always. Stark trait, Robb said. Reborn half-wolf, ever hungry. Greatjon clapped him so hard shoulder wound flared. Wait till he howls at moon, will scare crows off battlements. Robb laughed. For the first time since the twins he laughed freely. That night, feast spilled across hall. Minstrels strummed, Hallis hammered keg lids for drums. Sabella Glover danced with Willa Manderley, spinning in mismatched steps. Robb tasted warmth of cinnamon cider, cradled Eddard as he passed from lord to lady. For a precious span he believed in peace, fragile as candles, but bright. Yet as festivities waned, Maester Eirik approached with raven scroll from the wall. Eyes somber. Robb read beaded words. Ranging party vanished beyond Frostfangs. Crimson-eyed ravens returned alone. Snow bears sighted with blue fire in their maws. Lord Commander Mormont requested immediate aid. Men, dragon glass, and any king's ear. Robb folded parchment. Fire crackled. Voices ebbed. He looked upon tiny Eddard asleep in Jane's arms. He kissed her forehead, then turned to Greatjon. Council at dawn, he said. Winter is no longer coming. It is here. He felt the truth settle like armor across shoulders. War's shape changed, but war remained. Yet now he fought not solely to reclaim honor, but to safeguard futures swaddled in wool. Wolves would run, walls would rise, and in the deep chill of endless night, a stave of stubborn warmth would stand in Winterfell's heart. Robb left the hall, Eddard's faint breath against his neck, and stepped onto parapet where snow fell silent. He scanned star-cloaked sky, seeking omens. Instead, he found only the quiet pulse of his son's heartbeat and the cold certainty of tasks yet unmet. Behind him, castle lights glimmered. Ahead darkness yawned, vast unknown, but no longer unconquerable. He whispered to the wind, a vow crafted anew, not of crowns or vengeance, but of shelter, for bairns, for builders, for broken soldiers, for the whole of a realm too long crushed beneath ambition's heel. And as snow swirled, he felt Grey Wind's spirit prowl near, guardian again, guiding footfalls along ramparts. Together, in the hush of newborn winter, man and memory kept vigil, awaiting dawn, preparing for dusk, steadfast as the direwolf carved into Winterfell's gate, teeth bared not just in fury now, but in promise of fierce protection.